I think in Due South was a very serious, loopy, nutsy, dramatic, emotionally honest, intellectually goofy urban fable.
It was conflicting cultures of two countries who are right next to each other.
Canadian and American. It turns out they have humor.
Canadian cop Mountie, who still trusts in the goodness of humanity.
Due South is a folktale and trying to teach people that there's a better way to do things.
The first time I heard about it, I was actually in Los Angeles, and my agent had called there and said, there's a pilot that they're making in Canada. Would you be interested in doing this? And I didn't, at the time, want to do a series, so I said no, and I didn't read it, actually.
My agent called me. It's pilot season. He says, I got this interesting pilot called Due South, about a Canadian Mountie and a Chicago cop. It's written by Paul Haggis, and I said, who? And he said, Paul Haggis. He won an Emmy for 30-something, very talented writer. I said, yeah, sure, send it to me.
Anyway, it came back eventually, and he said, would you at least read it this time? And by that time, it was kind of the new season in Hollywood, and I'd been reading just one terrible script after another, and thinking, do I really want to be Fred's boss at the rock pile in the Flintstone movie? Or, you know, there were just stacks of horrible stuff. You can't imagine how much dreck there is. And then I thought, well, I'll read this, even though I didn't particularly want to do a series. And it made me laugh. By the second page, I think I was laughing out loud, which almost never happens.
I said, yeah, sure, send it to me. And I gave it a read, and I found it very clever, very funny. I didn't get a lot of the Canadian references, but I gave it a shot anyway.
Most of the parts that you see in television series, or most of the parts that you see in most movie scripts, for that matter, are they're kind of built upon a preceding character. There's sort of a long line of it. You go, oh, that's like this, which was like that. There's really very little that I could think of when I first read this that this character resembled and seemed utterly unique. And also I had absolutely no idea how to go about playing it, so that seemed like a pretty good challenge.
And I had to do 3 scenes for the audition, and I was having, the first 2 were easy and I was banging them out. I was working on them with my wife. And there was this one, the consulate scene. He's standing outside the consulate and he can't talk.
This is your job? This is like your real job? Do you believe it? This is his job. They actually pay people to do this in Canada. Sorry.
I was having just a hell of a time with it, and I called my agent the night before and I said, you know, I'm going to pass. He said, what? I said, well, you know, I don't think it's really for me. He says, no, you don't understand. This is a big pilot, and it's a lot of money, and if it goes to series, you could be a millionaire. Okay, what time do you want me to show up?
When I first met David Marciano, I thought this is kind of perfect. We came from entirely different worlds. He's from New Jersey, Italian, living in Los Angeles, really American, no interest in anything to do with Canada.
I was an urban boy, and you know, he was a rural boy. So, you know, there was you can't really come from two more different worlds.
And we didn't immediately get along at all. We didn't have. I mean, not that we didn't not get along. We just there was nothing. There was no immediate kind of click. And I think we both thought, well, let's just leave it like this because it'll actually be relatively good when we start filming. And there was kind of an immediate. The distance between the two of them showed up right away. We didn't have to work to not understand each other. Only takes an extra second to be courteous. After you, man. Oh, after you, sir.
Are we gonna get on or what? Tom, I bet there ain't a lot of high-speed chases in Canada, huh?
There's the oddity of having a show set in America but shot in Canada featuring a Canadian going to America but the only one being American coming to Canada seems perfectly in keeping with television and more in keeping with the lunacy of American television.
I think it made sense for a Canadian, and for it to be filmed in Canada, because I mean, Paul Haggis is Canadian, and when Canadians grow up in the shadow of America, so we're always consumed by this comparison thing and the problems between the two cultures and the good things and the bad things. And so we could define that better than America, because in America, they probably wouldn't come up with the premise of a Mountie coming down to America, because to America, Canada is resources and a kind of irrelevant country that's up another state or whatever, some place where we can go on holiday for cheap.
We did go to Chicago once in a while. I never went, but we would send down a camera unit so they would shoot little bits and pieces of Chicago skyline and scenery and stuff, and then make it look as though we were there.
It might have been a little weird for Dave Marciano, who is very American. So what? It's kind of a show within a show for American to come up to Canada to shoot a show about a Canadian going down to the States. So it was actually kind of strangely reversed for him.
The irony of a Mountie coming to Chicago, but an American going to Canada to shoot the show made perfect sense. I mean, doesn't it? It's the two sides of the same coin.
I'm gonna go to the gas station. I'll be right back.
Sam Dalton made only one mistake. He planned everything but how he was going to spend the money. Before he'd hit Whitehorse, he'd left a trail of 20s that took me right to his door. But Sam's case was nothing like this.
No, I know, but what I can't seem to find is...
Hello, son.
Hello, Dad. How are you?
I'm dead, son. Other than that, do you mean?
No, that's what I was asking.
Oh, that's good. Never be ashamed to ask a stupid question, son. I taught you that, didn't I?
Not specifically, no.
Well, no time like the present.
Well, the appearance of Gordon Pinsent is kind of an interesting one, because it wasn't planned, I don't think. And I remember being up in Skagway in Alaska, where we were staying when we were shooting the pilot.
And they said, well, let's see what happens. You've got to come up north now and get shot. And for the pilot. And I said, well, get someone else to do that. I mean, you know. Oh, come on, Gordon. So up I went.
Haggis's intention was to have him shot and then possibly have him returned by way of these diaries. And we were in the bar in Skagway, and I'm saying, you gotta be crazy. You got Pinsent? Don't shoot him, don't kill him. You gotta bring him back. And Paul's like, how? How do I bring him back? Well, he can be a ghost. He can come back as a ghost. Don't be ridiculous. We'll never have a ghost in this show.
We'd sit at the bar, and the three of us would dream up ways in which to bring him back in human form, in sort of living form, and they thought that would be an added kind of added interest to the viewers.
Though I'd bug him for show after show, that we have to bring Pinsent back. So then slowly Gordon started returning in voiceover. I'd be reading his diaries, and then you kind of hear him talking, and then I'd say, well, you've got him already back now. He's talking in voiceover. You really should just bring him back in the flesh. No. And then, sure enough, one of the scripts showed up, and there he was in the backseat of a car.